Well,
hi, everybody.
hello, you good people. Welcome, friends, lovers, and thank you for joining us on this unusual day, this Tuesday, September 27th. This is 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir.
Oh, I'm here.
You are here. Folks, one of us was a little under the weather and couldn't quite do the Sunday show, so I want to say thank you. Big thank you to you who are watching live, especially if you're in the chat. A couple folks have already checked in, including the creator and fixer of electronics to last. Yeah, you know, even if I didn't know that name change was coming, I would have no problem figuring out exactly who that was. Audrey Lee is also in the chat. Thank you for joining us. We want to see more of you in the chat. This is the kind of topics tonight that I want to hear a conversation about. And my favorite part of the show is interacting with you all. Thank you for joining us. This is 5 minutes, and we're not going to take much more than 5 or, I don't know, maybe 12 times 5 minutes, because Yaron Brook is going live at 7 p.m. Eastern, and we don't want to bump into that, you know, because he's been doing a pretty good job lately. And I kind of like to hear what he's got to say. Folks, thank you for joining us. Again, this is an unusual day, a Tuesday, September 27th, the 58th day of this Your Best Year Yet, 2024. It's a leap year. You've got an extra day coming up in a couple days, 2 days. We have February 29th this year. How cool is that?
Yeah.
To make it extra awesome. That means you don't have 307 days until Christmas. You have 308 days until Christmas. I'll bet you're already planning your shopping, or at least thinking about who puts the twinkle in your eye that Santa's going to give something good to. But seriously, folks, Easter is just 33 days away. Spring in 21 days, St. Patrick's Day. We're going to have some fun with that in just 19 days. And on this date, well, originally I planned the show for Sunday,
Yeah.
the 25th. And I want to do a couple of the things that happened on Sunday, on the 25th historically, because it's all going to tie together as it always does. This is what happens when you get people who are interested in philosophy and psychology and history. On February 25th, 1870, the middle late 1800s, after the Civil War, after slavery was abolished in the United States, Hiram R. Revels is sworn into the U.S. Senate. Who was Hiram R. Revels? Why do we even care that he was sworn into the Senate? Well, he was the first African American ever to sit in Congress.
Yeah.
First black man in Congress.
Yeah, at first I thought you said rebels, but it's Revels.
Rebels.
V as in victory.
As in revelry, that's right.
Yeah, revelry.
And, of course, he was rebellious in the sense that even though he was surrounded by prejudice on all sides, despite the fact that slavery was abolished at that point, yeah, he did it. He became the first U.S. Senator, 1870. During the Civil War, Revels, a college-educated minister, helped form African-American Army regiments in the Union cause, started a school for freedmen, and served as a chaplain in the United Army. Posted in Mississippi, Revels remained in the former Confederate state after the war and entered into Reconstruction-era politics. Now, folks, I bring this up because we just finished watching Season 2 of The Gilded Age.
Yeah.
This is a good television series
It's very,
to watch.
very good. Very nice.
It's so well done, and it gives you a taste, and you may feel that it's biased a little bit here and there, maybe a little bit against the wealthy, maybe a little bit against industrialists of the time. I think for what it is,
that bad.
it's surprisingly even-handed.
It's surprisingly good.
And the protagonists, the businessmen of this show, the one in particular, our hero, I think of him as our hero anyway, did in fact get to say great things and do some great things. It's really well done. It's really good.
It's very nice.
So if you're not watching The Gilded Age, consider that. Consider giving that a watch. But we do have black characters in it, and the show's taking place in the late 1800s. And it's just a reminder that, yeah, they did great things. They faced enormous obstacles. And more than anything else, man, have we come a long way.
Yeah, I just want to say real quick, as we're wrapping up Black History Month, which I think is a very valid way to celebrate African American history. Not as a, some sort of pity thing to throw alms, whatever. No. I thought about this today, and pardon me, my voice is probably a little scratchy, and I'm probably a little bit out of it because I'm just getting over the worst cold I've ever had. It was a man cold. It was specifically a man cold.
If a man had this cold, he would be in bed with the ice pack on his head. Bring me some chicken soup.
I was a little bit like that.
No, you were great.
But wrapping up Black History Month, I gotta say, I thought to myself, what would life be like if we didn't actually have African Americans living in the United States of America in 2024? What would it be like? If there were no slaves that were brought over by the United Kingdom, or the Dutch or whoever else who brought them over. If we didn't have these people who are now living among us. Some of them like anybody.
They are us.
They are us. And I'm really glad that we have the kind of cultural impact and achievements and the scientific and technological and there's so many achievements that come out of that history. And I'm proud of the ones who are super good and that they know it, because they should know it and they should be proud of it.
Now we've got young people and other people who listen to this show who I know are saying, well, yeah, but they're race. It shouldn't be about race. And you're right. It's not about race. It's about what people in that race had to get through to get where they got. You're right. Race doesn't matter, except sadly, historically it did. And people overcame enormous challenges, and we admire that. And that's why I want to jump forward. I'll go back to February 25th in a minute, but February 27th, today was the anniversary of Lesser versus Garnett. The 19th Amendment establishing women's right to vote was upheld.
Yeah.
In this case, a prominent Baltimore lawyer named Oscar Lesser sued to strike all women from Maryland's voting rolls on the grounds that the 19th Amendment infringed on, you'll see the connection to the previous story, infringed on state sovereignty, since the Maryland state legislature had refused to ratify that amendment. Maryland didn't certify the 19th Amendment at that time. They didn't certify it until 1958. The 19th Amendment, which stated that the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on account of sex. It sounds funny today in 2024. No, it didn't mean they deny you because you had sex. They're talking about gender here. It was the product of more than 7 decades of meetings, petitions, protests by women's suffrage and their supporters. Folks, this is crazy, but it was on that date, February 27th. Now I lost my year. By 1916, the Democratic and Republican parties endorsed female enfranchisement. On June 4th, 1919, the 19th Amendment was passed, sent to the states for ratification. And yet, this person, Lesser, this lawyer of all people, said, no, Maryland didn't ratify this, and therefore women shouldn't have the right to vote. Folks, again, we have come a long way.
And there's a song that came up in my mind for some reason yesterday.
Yes.
Actually. There's a song by the Eurythmics from 1980-something featuring Aretha Franklin. And it's called Sisters Are Doing It For Themselves. Think about that. Standing on our own 2 feet and ringing out their own bells, or whatever the lyrics were.
Damn right.
It was a great song. It's a great song. It's a fun song, and I just keep thinking to myself, there are ideas, philosophical and political, and moral and epistemological ideas out there that are really, really bad. That are really trying to keep people, not just sisters, but anybody, and specifically African Americans, Black Americans. They're trying oppress them in ways that are very, sinister. And I hope that, I know that eventually, folks like Glenn Lowry and, John McWhorter and the one gentleman, the young gentleman with the last name of Coleman, I believe. Anyway, there are so many people out there who are Black Americans who are realizing that that there are bad ideas out there that make it seem like they're good ideas for them, but they are actually not.
Right.
It's very important to be careful in your thinking and understanding that you as an individual have moral agency and autonomy.
Yeah, I think the intellectual you're thinking of is Coleman Hughes, who's been on Sam Harris's podcast recently.
Yeah, he was also interviewed by Ilan Giorno of Ayn Rand Institute.
Oh, good. I still have to listen to that.
Yeah.
And yes, they're reaching the point of saying, yeah, we've been through hell, racial discrimination and everything, but the ideal remains a colorblind society. Yeah. We do want to get to the point where race doesn't matter anymore. And the race hustlers today are making that impossible. So let me go back to February 25th real quick. Yeah. The Legal Tender Act is passed to help finance the Civil War. The Union doesn't have enough money. So on February 25th, 1862, the U.S. Congress passes the Legal Tender Act, authorizing the use of paper notes to pay the government bills, which ended the long-standing policy of only using gold or silver in transactions. And it allowed the government to finance the enormously costly Civil War long after its gold and silver reserves were depleted. Now, unquote, this is arguably an emergency situation. Read the article, The Ethics of Emergencies by Ayn Rand, if you want to know what I mean. But sadly, after the war, well, they didn't roll it back. And paper money has been a thing ever since in the United States. Of course, paper notes have always been a thing, but yeah, paper script, paper money. Ugh. And that is what I want to tie to the February 25th, the most important thing that ever happened on February 25th. The birth of George Harrison. I love the fact that George Harrison's, people think of the Beatles as kind of left, kind of hippy-dippy, and they really weren't. I mean, they were all over the map, and mostly in good ways, but the first song George Harrison wrote with the Beatles, it was a big success, and they knew it was going to be they knew it was good, because they made it the first song on the album Revolver. Was a song called Taxman.
Oh, right.
And it's a great song protesting taxes and taxmen. Link to it is in the show notes. I love George Harrison. I love that it was his birthday on Sunday.
Yeah.
It's always a good time to watch the Concert for George. We talked about what are the greatest concert films ever made. And, you immediately think of Stop Making Sense by Talking Heads. You think of films, so the Led Zeppelin fans will be thinking The Song Remains the Same. Yes fans like me will be thinking Yes songs. But Concert for George, the concert they held in 2002, 1 year to the day after he passed away, it is an amazing film. And there are multiple points in the film where I just get choked up. And other times when I just get so inspired.
I got to tell you, there's two concerts for George. There's an old one with George in it, right? And then there's the newer one.
I'm not sure what you mean.
Oh, okay. There's a recording of a George Harrison concert. It wasn't Concert for George, but it was a George Harrison concert where I believe he also featured some of the Indian musicians.
I know what you're thinking of. Yes. Yeah. This was a tribute, a charity concert.
Yeah.
We'll get to charity concerts, and just believe me, this is all going to tie together. We'll get to charity concerts in a moment, but you're thinking of the concert for Bangladesh.
Yeah, that's it.
And well worth watching. Yeah. It was a tribute charity concert to fight the starvation that was going on during the wars in the East. Yes, it was very tragic times, and
Yeah. So, but anyway, not to get confused with that. Now I'm confusing everybody. But no, this is after George Harrison passed away, and then they had the concerts. They're very beautiful.
So if you want to know, well, they started using paper script in 1862 to fight the Civil War that made it possible for Hiram Revels to become a black U.S. senator and eventually led the way even to, imagine this, votes for women. It all ties together, and it's all a beautiful thing, the way it happens as we get out of things that weren't beautiful at all. And to me, that's everything that George Harrison represents.
Yeah, that's the next thing, is to for our culture to embrace the fact that taxation is actually abusive rather than compassionate. That's the next thing to do.
Yeah, and some folks like the expression taxation is theft, and if that's how you want to think about it, great. I certainly think it's improper. And,
I mean, it's not. It doesn't. It's a flippant comment.
Yeah, I think it weakens the argument there to call it theft. That's not what theft is, but
I would.
But I'm okay. I'm okay with it at this point. I'm used to it, so
I would say that there are, a lot of people are confused about what's the proper role of government and what the government should be taxing us for and using their funds for, and there are legitimate reasons to use funds from the citizenry for certain things to protect our individual rights, of course. But yeah, it's an interesting thing what George Harrison put out there on that song.
Yeah, and I love that. I love so much about everything George Harrison did. It's interesting that George Harrison was the lead guitar player for the Beatles. And yet at the same time, there are songs where John Lennon and Paul McCartney were decent guitarists too and played leads. And on that first George Harrison single, Paul McCartney actually played the lead guitar on that, as well as the fuzz bass, which was like a lead instrument as well. And yet it's a great performance by George Harrison. Of course, he's the lead singer on that one. Interesting notes about that. I've got one more on this date, and that is on today, the 27th, and that is it's the birth date. A happy birthday to the late Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, the American poet, the poet of the 1800s, the American poet of the 19th century. I've got just a couple of quotes from Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, who said, "If we could read the secret history of our enemies," doesn't that sound like a meme that goes around these days? If we could read the secret history of our enemies, we should find in each man's life sorrow and suffering enough to disarm all hostility. Now, at a time in 2024 when war is raging around the world, but particularly in the Ukraine and in the Middle East, that sounds a little woo. But you've seen the meme before. You've seen people say, well, everybody is fighting a battle that you know nothing about, so be kind. Okay, this is a better way of saying that. And I'm good with this. In 99% of cases, it's absolutely true. When Henry Wadsworth Longfellow says, if we could read the secret history of our enemies, we should find in each man's life sorrow and suffering enough to disarm all hostility. Okay, 99% might be an exaggeration, but most of the people you ever meet will be decent, if not really, really, really good. Definitely not outright evil. I like that. Let me give just a couple more Henry Wadsworth Longfellow quotes. His poetry, obviously, if you haven't read it, you should read it. But just real quick. The best thing that one can do when it's raining is to let it rain. I immediately think of Let It Rain by Eric Clapton. But yes, A is A. The best thing one can do when it's raining is to let it rain. He's also the one who said, into each life some rain must fall. Again, lyrics stolen by our rock and rollers, in this case Led Zeppelin's The Rain Song. You could probably start a rock band and just use all the lyrics from Henry Wadsworth Longfellow.
Yeah, both of those quotes, though, I think all of them you're probably going to be reading, are very contextual, and I think perhaps there are better interpretations than some other interpretations. Oh, there are always ways to interpret these as bad things. So I'll give one more real quick. And Amy, see if this doesn't remind you of your week before you fell ill, the amazing things that you did this week. Give what you have to somebody. It may be better than you think.
Well, Amy's been getting rid of things. She is. You've cleaned out your office, which had a fair amount of clutter in it, a lot of memories.
Yeah, I was my own archaeologist. And,
now, we didn't do a lot of goodwill or contributions, but the point is,
little, but
when you do give things away or sell them, they might turn out to be better than you realize they were.
How do you mean?
Well,
that you're going to regret that you gave it away?
No, just that you'll realize, that really had value for somebody. Even if it no longer has value for me.
I see.
And yeah, sometimes you might think twice and say, you know what? I missed that. I'm going to go out and buy one of those again.
Yeah.
You get used to stuff, and it's good to have fresh eyes.
Let me just insert myself here.
Please.
I cleaned out my office, which was also formerly the bunny's room, and now is my dance studio and my office. So I've converted this junk room basically into a dance studio and office. Cleaned out the entire closet as well. It was really, really hard to do. I put in like 30 hours into it. I think it was like a dozen trash bags. And there's one bag that I'm going to be donating, but of clothes. But yeah, it was really quite transformational, and it really put me in a place where I feel like I can move forward in life a little bit more. I'm a little bit more free and not so much load-bearing as I was before. And it's great. It's a great feeling. Highly recommend cleaning out your stuff.
Yeah. Marie Kondo would be proud of you. You are no longer a prisoner. Where did I get citizen from? A prisoner of your clutter.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, absolutely.
But yeah. So anyway, back to Henry Wadsworth Longfellow.
Yes.
I have thoughts about all of these. I just don't know how.
Oh, you have a couple more quotes.
Well, these are the ones that you've already done. Yeah. I would say, if we could read the secret history of our enemies, we should find in each man's life sorrow and suffering enough to disarm all hostility. Depends on the nature of your enemies or your enemy. Depends on the context of the enemy and then exactly what they're doing. Obviously, this can be construed in a way that is really bad.
Sure.
About not morally judging anybody because everyone suffers, and the practical case for that would be to rehabilitate murderers and rapists in prisons or something crazy of that that nature, because we just got to get down to their suffering, and then they're going to be able to learn how to become empathetic and compassionate and remorseful, and that doesn't actually work in a lot of cases for a lot of reasons. The best part of this is, that the person who you think is a threat to you, is not just some sort of two-dimensional monster, and you can look into their context without without dropping your sense of morality. But yeah, it's...
Well...
I guess that's what I take from that.
Yeah, well, Longfellow may have been wiser than we're giving him credit for here. I remember when Ayn Rand was answering a question that was given to her, and the questioner had originally said, in view of your hostility... And it was at the Fort Hall Forum, and the moderator repeated the question without that word. And Ayn Rand said, I want to point something out. Thank you very much for not using the word hostility. Because I think she might have been talking about the Soviet Russia. And she said, hostility is a psychological evaluation, and that would be inappropriate. I despise the Soviets. I hate the Soviets. But I'm not hostile to the Soviets. So maybe, Longfellow was being very exact here. In the sense of disarming hostility, it is entirely possible to say, no, this person needs to, for example, stay in jail all of his life. Or we've talked about forgiveness. This person needs to be out of my life and unforgiven. And yet let go of the hostility by understanding fully the context, the situation, what's going on there. So maybe Longfellow can be cut some slack in that regard.
Yeah, I do like the best thing one can do when it's raining is to let it rain. And this also can apply to people. I know that's kind of crazy. You know, there's the metaphysical, which you can't change, you know, in this case, rain. But there's also situations where you can't change people. And you may have to deal with them for a finite amount of time. And and you just have to kind of let them be who they're going to be. And in that case, treat people the way that you deserve to treat them in that kind of case, where you can't change them, and by taking whatever they're doing personally, or you know, and having them make you upset, you can just treat them like the rain. They're going, just let it rain. It's just going to play out the way it's going to play out, and you're going to try to do your best with the situation and make it as easy as possible for yourself. Treat other people the way you deserve to treat them.
Yeah, we've been asked about that in the context of forgiveness before, and if you read Ayn Rand's essay, The Metaphysical and the Man-Made, she makes the point that metaphysical facts like rain you don't judge. Not in the sense of saying, I'm angry that it rained, or I feel an injustice has been done that it rained. You might be disappointed. You might have to change your plans. You might get even really frustrated. But you don't get angry at the weather. You don't accuse the weather of being immoral or unjust.
Yeah, unless you're James Taggart.
Unless you're James Taggart. Exactly. But people, you do judge. They could have done otherwise, and so you judge, oh, that was a good thing they did. Oh, that was a bad thing they did. But if you read that essay, Ayn Rand does make the point that once a person has taken a given action and it's had a certain effect, at that point, those facts are metaphysical. And
Yep.
you have to say, okay, that's the situation now, and I have to judge how to deal with it based on those facts. You don't then say, well, because it should have been otherwise, I'm going to refuse to face those facts. No, you judge, and that's the difference, that it's man-made, but the facts then become metaphysical.
Yeah.
Not in the sense that you don't judge them, but in the sense that you do deal with them. So that's an important point to make, and I think that's consistent here.
Yeah.
Narendra says, well, you always judge, but do it gently, maybe. Well, that's a little different. In that I agree, but that just means take the full context into account. It's so easy to make a snap judgment, and you have a right to do that if somebody's done you wrong. It can be more empowering, yes, to take time and say, well, let me make sure I've got the full context. I just looked at the beginning of the chat here, and Audrey Lee said, love that bass line. You know, I know the artist, so I will pass that on. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you deeply and personally for that.
Yeah, and thank you. I am feeling better. I'm not quite over it yet, but I am feeling better.
Now, a connection I was going to make a little later on, but I think I want to cover it right now because I'm going to get into the section of, in fact, let me do that. What are we watching this week? What are we listening to this week? And what are we promoting this week? Real quick, this week, I did one show on the Ayn Rand Center UK. Link is in the show notes. The International Court of Justice. Anti-Semitism Welcome. On the show, I called it the International Kangaroo Court of Injustice, so you can imagine what my take was. Show did well, got a lot of views, and it was a good conversation to have. Yaron Brook also did a show that was worth listening to, The War on Sex for Pleasure. Why would you get pleasure out of a war on sex? No. It's a war on having sex as an end in itself. Good conversation. I remember the pleasure police of a couple decades ago.
Oh, yeah.
When the left became anti-sex. You young folks won't know this, but when I was young, the left, they were the hippies. They were copulating in the streets. They were the ones who were going to destroy Western Civ because they wanted sex all the time. Somehow that's turned around. Everybody's against sex. The funny thing is nobody's against sex. Reasonable people who don't call themselves the left, people who don't call themselves the right, we're all good with it. So, good episode, worth listening to. In fact, there is a 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir playlist of our shows on adventure and romance and sexuality, and that link is in the show notes too. But
Yes.
what else? What else are we listening to, watching this week? We told you we watched The Gilded Age, highly recommended. Another show we watched, and this was recommended by several people. I want to point out in particular Daniel Nolan, who is on Twitter /X, Daniel Nolan, recommended The Greatest Night in Pop.
Yeah.
Now, you all know
So
and you all
fun.
agree that the 1980s were the greatest decade for pop music, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. This was it's a documentary, really well done, because they do it in a way that, sometimes you watch something that's 40 years old and it looks like it's 40 years old. No, the cinematography on this, the narration, everything was really good.
It is not grainy, and it was like, it was very nicely done.
And it's about something that happened 41 years ago. This was the night that they recorded the song "We Are the World."
Yeah,
And it tells the story about the charity, the tribute, everything it took to put it together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is well worth watching.
It's in one night, and this is after the VMAs or the AMA, I don't know, AMAs or something like that, music awards in Hollywood or Los Angeles, I forget.
Now, what Amy means by afterwards is immediately that evening afterwards.
Yeah, they're not going to after parties. They're going straight to a secret studio location.
So Quincy Jones and Lionel Richie are arranging this, co-wrote the song with Michael Jackson, and they've got to try to figure out, how do we get a whole bunch of pop stars who've all got their own schedules, their own tours, their own agendas, their own stuff going on. How are you going to get enough of them together to raise a ton of money to save starving Ethiopians together? How do you get them all in one place? They've all got their own egos. They've all got their own stuff going on.
Yeah.
So you're right. They arranged to do it right after the big annual music awards in Los Angeles, because they were all going to be in town. We're like, come to the studio afterward.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really, really well done documentary. It's really fun. I'll just say, I had already heard about it when I was, existing during that time as a young person, about what happened with Cyndi Lauper, at least a little bit of it. But some of it is just phenomenal. Some of it is like, I can't believe that happened, and this actually came off. Not without a hitch. There were some hitches, but it actually worked, and it actually was produced, and they were actually able to use it. And it was pretty astounding you think back then, people knew what they had, but then again, you're like, what kind of audio recording are you? What kind of mixing and what kind of technology do you have? It's so primitive compared to nowadays. So it was pretty amazing.
Now, I know some people in the self-interest community are turned off by the idea of charity. It's kind of been hit so hard by demands for self-sacrifice that they kind of shrug at charity. Officially, we would say it should be voluntary. It should never be imposed, and it should never be morally imposed, even if it's not legislated. People shouldn't make you feel guilty for it. We're not altruists. We're not self-sacrificers. But that leaves the question, okay, well, what if you do want to give to charity? What's a rational way to do it?
Yeah.
How should charity be done? With no sacrifices, it's all values, it's all trade, it's all win-win. This show, this documentary, this is an example of what charity should be. It's all win, it's all good, no sacrifices, it's all creation, production. It's a beautiful thing. And it's why I think that if anybody should be champions of charity, no, not as a moral requirement, as a wholly optional, personal, heartening value, it should be the most rational people on earth. And this show was very rational. So, again, thank you very much for the recommendation and answering the question, well, what did you think of that show that I recommended? And that's what we think of that show you recommended. Again, thank you for that. And
one more thing is that I gained a new appreciation for Lionel Richie.
Yeah.
I always I never particularly appreciated his music in the 80s. You know, it was okay, but it just got to the point where it was a little schmaltzy. And I'll just say that.
Hello.
Is it me you're looking for?
He was very, very good at that, but it just wasn't your thing.
And you know, but he was a hell of a showman. Oh my gosh, there were clips of him at this awards show, and he's the actual host. And on top of that, having host duties, he's putting all this stuff for Live Aid together, and on top of that, he's accepting his own awards. It was insane the amount of work that he did in that one 48-hour span, or actually leading up to it even, and writing a song with Michael Jackson. And trying to get Stevie Wonder involved in the process, which didn't work out, which was really kind of funny. More to that Stevie Wonder story, you'll have to see it. But anyway, Lionel Richie, what a showman. They don't make them like that anymore. People are not that committed and that gregarious and that twinkling of a personality anymore, unfortunately. I hope to see that brought back at some point in my life.
Yeah, maybe if Lionel Richie had stuck more with the Commodore's style, you would have been more into him. Christopher Smith in the chat is all, she's a brick house. Can you believe that was Lionel Richie?
That's pretty crazy.
It was a whole different era. A whole different era. No, very, very good. So again, thank you for the recommendation. Those of you, Daniel in particular, who recommended that. And we do recommend it too. The Greatest Night in Pop. And it's interesting because folks have been sharing online, how do I replace cable? Believe it or not, there are people still using cable television. And like, well, you a la carte. You get whatever services, you get a good internet service, and then you buy whatever you want. And it's reminding me that there's yet another way in which there are too many values out there for us to properly appreciate even a tiny fraction of them.
There's too few hours in the day.
There really are. It's crazy, and it's come up in a couple different conversations where I've had to reference an old post I made. I've said, and this is one of my pet phrases, we are surrounded by miracles, not least of which is ourselves. And you know what I mean by miracles. When I say surrounded by miracles, I mean we're surrounded by the products and the innovations and knowledge, information, and methods and opportunities and just abundance, which none of us could have produced alone on a deserted island or a desert island. And yet, think about this. Each of you who has ever had a single independent thought and took action on it, you have done exactly that. You made it happen. You're part of what made it happen. If you are a net producer, if you have created more than you've destroyed, if you have produced more than you have consumed, and if you're getting a paycheck and paying your own bills, you are in that category. Some of you who haven't even done that are in that category. We can get into that. You have created these miracles. That's why I say we are surrounded by miracles, not least of which is ourselves. This power of reason to know reality, and the power of ethics to provide a rational, effective framework for action.
Yes.
And the power of whatever degree of political, economic liberty we've got to trade with other people, to exchange products and ideas and action and effort and labor. This has all led to a world that would have been unimaginable to Hiram in 1870, to the women struggling for the right to vote in 1913, to anybody 100 years ago. We are surrounded by it. I don't mean, it's not literally miracles. We're not talking about mysticism. We're not talking about magic. This is not the antithesis of reason. This is reason.
Well, the miracles, I would say, come from the efficacy of the human mind.
That's true, but that has always been there. It has finally added up to what we've got right now. And I say that because Well, for example, I didn't link to this, but there was a show, Barry Weiss's most recent episode of Honestly. She's talking to a guest about anxiety, people suffering from anxiety.
I didn't hear this yet.
And, why are kids unhappy? Why are young people depressed? And, why is my mouse going crazy here? All right, let's make sure the show is still working.
There's a ghost in the machine.
Yeah, there is. That's weird. I get my paperwork off there for now. And kids are going through it. And if you ask the average kid, and not all of them, a lot of them know better, but if you ask the average kid these days, are things better or worse now than they were in the past? A surprising number of them will say, well, things are worse now, or getting worse. I hear this from adults, too, which is even more bizarre. But it's sad that kids believe this. They have it better than any of us have ever had it. They have more opportunity. In substantial ways, they have more freedom. They have more information. They have more that they can do with their lives. Yeah, and I posted this online, and somebody said, well, I can't help but think we've stagnated. The last 50 years have been staggeringly awesome. I mean, give me... Well, we were driving to the polls today. We voted. Look at my... You got one too, and I voted sticker. I'm not going to say... It was the Michigan primaries today.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say who I voted for.
Oh, I can say who
but I'll say that her first name was not Donald.
Right. Yeah. I'll say I don't... of course, I don't agree with everything that she stands for or promotes or doesn't promote, but I'd like to stick it to the man, as one would say.
Well, it's kind of sad because Javier Milei went to CPAC.
Yeah.
Javier Milei...
He did a bad job of it.
He's a rock star. He's a freaking rock star. He's awesome.
Yeah.
He should be on a pedestal, and he probably will be, for saving the country, for saving Argentina. Wow, is this weird? Sorry, folks. My computer is going a little nuts here. Just trying to make sure that it's not going to...
explode?
Well... yeah.
That isn't a touch screen, is it?
It is a touch screen.
Oh, interesting. So fancy.
And that's why I'm kind of wondering if... see how it's kind of like it's saying that the screen's... Sorry, folks. I don't mean to... Let's see if I can just ignore what's going on here.
Yeah, let's see that.
That is so weird. We're still live, right?
Yeah, we're still live.
Okay, good. Javier Milei goes to CPAC and starts talking collectivist tripe. He goes on about abortion, for example, and he's anti-abortion. When he's in Argentina, this is not his main thing. His main thing is free markets.
Well, yeah. He's
Yaron Brook was very disappointed by this.
Playing to the crowd.
I was disappointed a little bit, but I must admit I was not surprised at all. And so I'm the same way about Nikki Haley. I know if Nikki Haley she won't, but if she actually does get nominated for president, yes, I know she won't. People in the chat are going to give me 100 reasons why I shouldn't even be thinking about Nikki Haley as a nominated. I understand that. But if Donald Trump has a heart attack or for whatever reason doesn't run and Nikki Haley... I know in advance I'm going to be disappointed by her positions on abortion, on immigration, on several matters. I know that. And I know that about Javier Milei. And yet I still think he's a rock star. And he is. And he's going to save Argentina from itself. So I was really glad to get out there and vote. I was very enthusiastic despite all the qualifications. It was cool.
It was good. And the person we voted for, her name was actually the first name on the list. So it was kind of nice. Pretty easy. And, but yeah, Javier Milei, he's a politician. He is a politician. That's one of the things I learned when I was state committee woman at the GOP before Trump. And when I was trying to educate people on individual rights and economic freedom and all of that. And so, yeah, you're going to be surprised. You're going to see people who you think are the most principled people that you've ever met, and then all of a sudden they're because they don't have an actual consistent philosophy. They're going to change with the wind and play to the crowd, and so it was not unexpected. I hope that he goes back and makes Argentina a wonderful place of economic freedom, where people have moral agency and creative agency, and they can actually do better things with their lives and make their country the best that they can. Maybe outshine the U.S. maybe someday. But that's... Robert's still trying to figure out why there's a ghost in a machine.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's mostly letting you have your say. If you look in the description, if you look in the show notes, there's a link to Kate Micucci, who's a parody artist. She's one half of the comedy duo Garfunkel and Oates. And she has a song called Grocery Store. And it's a song about going to a grocery store. And I got a kick out of it, not just because it's kind of funny. She makes funny observations about how all grocery stores have these certain things in common, and some of them are quirky. But what's interesting is I go into a grocery store, and I think of the memes where anti-socialists, and I'm as anti-socialist as there come, but some of my anti-socialist friends will talk about how can anybody be anti-capitalist and look at a grocery store in an even semi-free country, and they show a picture of usually the produce section and all of the beautiful fruits and vegetables piled high, pyramids of these delicious things and amazing things and more than anybody could consume. And it makes me think, earlier this week I went into a Walmart. Now, you could do this at just about any department store, maybe not a Nordstrom.
Were you wearing pajamas?
Maybe not Saks. I was not wearing pajama bottoms, but I was wearing pants. So I was kind of dressed up for a Walmart.
Were you wearing a shirt?
Yes. Well, no shirt, no shoes. See, Audrey Lee says in the chat exactly what I'm thinking. Whenever I'm at the grocery store, I feel prosperous.
Yeah.
I have this feeling when I go to, department store. It could be Macy's. It could be Target. It could be our local Meijer, one of these supermarkets that are department store / supermarket. And there is not a single thing in Walmart. And there's a lot, I know the reputation, but there's a lot of cool stuff in a Walmart.
Yeah.
Including, 70-inch televisions and arts and crafts and just all sorts of stuff. There is not I'm guessing this is true for you as it is for me. There is not a single thing in the local Walmart when I walk in there that I couldn't buy and walk out with. Or maybe if the TV was big enough, have delivered. There's not a single thing there. And yeah, it's full. There's 10,000 things. There's every grocery item you could want. All sorts of electronics and televisions and computers and entertainment and video games. There's bicycles, including a few really good bicycles and a bunch of kind of cheap bicycles. Everything in the auto department, short of automobiles, and that includes, fancy tires and rims and batteries, everything in the arts and crafts, everything in the men's and ladies' clothes, everything in the grocery store. There's not a single thing that I couldn't walk out with. Assuming you've got, it doesn't have to be cash, you have a credit card, whatever. You could do the same thing. And it's all there for me and you. Anything we want. It's kind of outrageous. It's kind of crazy. And I do not take that for granted. It's fun. Amy works at the Henry Ford in Greenfield Village. And among the great historical buildings and properties and things that they've got there, there's a general store.
Yeah, J.R. Jones General Store.
And it's super sweet because they've got, in this general store, they've got some canned goods. They've got a little millinery. You can buy cloths and the things that you would need for sewing and knitting and crocheting. And, there's a section with some basic construction materials. It's like a little department store.
Yep.
So even 150 years ago, it was kind of cool.
And you could order things and they would be delivered there. You could pick them up.
Yeah, catalogs were becoming a thing.
Yeah.
But what you can get, it's almost the same as the kind of information you can get from the internet. Yaron likes to talk about his iPhone and the fact that he has access to all of the information in the world. Oh, you've got your iPhone. There you go.
So shiny.
But not just all of the information in the world. Every movie ever made, or just about any movie ever made. Every piece of music ever recorded. And it's just endless. It's just endless. We are surrounded by miracles. Not least of which is ourselves.
Well, not only that, but you can Google just about anything. If you're having trouble writing whatever it is, if you need a cover letter for your resume or whatever it is, you can basically, you could go on, ChatGPT or whatever it is, but you can get ideas to write what you need. You can call up tutorials to have you learn what you need to learn in a quick amount of time. You can find YouTube videos to tell you how to crochet if you want to. It's amazing.
Yes.
It's so quick. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, by the way, I just want to compliment you on your shirt, Robert. It's,
I'm not wearing my usual jacket today, and
nice.
It's because I got a new shirt.
It's a good shirt.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Pictures also on Facebook with our We Voted pictures.
Yeah.
Yes. So let me wind this down or wind it up or wrap it up with a thought that I want you to take home with you, which is, again, not only are we surrounded by abundance, and believe me, I've been poor, and even then I appreciate what's available to me. And I wouldn't call myself super wealthy now, but I appreciate all of the opportunities and all of the things. But somebody posted, I think Nick might have actually been in the chat earlier. Nick posted a post about the concept of worthiness. He's very critical of it. And you should read it. Nick Catton, C-A-T-T-O-N. He posts ideas about self-improvement, and you should read his Facebook posts. But I disputed this one. I kind of liked his conclusion, but he was throwing out the idea of worthiness. And part of the problem is people take that idea wrong. They think, well, everybody's worthy of love. No, most people are. And you absolutely should find it, and you should get you some. But there's a few people out there who aren't. It's during wartime is a good time to be reminded, well, some people actually aren't. So yes, if you're using that as an invalid concept, I can see the problem. But no, I'm a big fan of worthiness. And I'm telling you, if you watch this podcast, if you watch shows like this, I am 98.7% certain that you are worthy of all of that abundance, of all of those miracles, and of all the love in the world as well.
I'm going to say 99%.
Ooh, Amy's throwing out the benevolence there. You're probably right. We underestimate how good people are.
Yeah.
Because when people are good to us, we don't have to do anything about it. When somebody brings you a cup of coffee at a restaurant, when somebody sells you something at a department store, when you go into work and you do your work and at the end you get a paycheck, you get money. It's the coolest thing. We take all that for granted because nothing has to be done about it. But when somebody slights us, when somebody's rude to us, when somebody even just disagrees with us, oh my God, people suck. No, people are awesome. People are the best thing going. But I've made this point about gratitude before. I live a life of gratitude. I'm constantly grateful. For what? For just about everything. But it's interesting because I do have to remind myself, I have to be worthy of that. I like that concept of worthiness. It doesn't take a lot, but it does take something. It takes virtue. It takes effort. It takes productivity. And so my post-it note for the week says, be worthy. It may not take much, but one of the great things about having to be worthy of happiness, worthy of the abundance around you, is it reminds you not to take stuff for granted. And it reminds you, if you catch yourself slacking off, or if you catch yourself anxious and depressed like too many young kids today, say, no, wait, I've got something to rise to. And the rewards will be there, but I need to be worthy. I know you all are, but it's good to be conscious of it. I want you to be proud. I want you to have that self-esteem. You deserve it. It's all out there waiting for you. I'm sure you already are, but make sure you are getting a big, heaping helping of all the goodness that's out there.
Hankering of a hunk of all the goodness that's out there.
That's right. And how ambitious should you be? We've done shows on ambition. Yaron just did a show on ambition. You should be as ambitious as you can, because my other Post-it note, my reminder to myself this week is, don't you deserve the best? Okay, maybe you don't want the best. Maybe you don't want to work 18 hours a day. You only want to work 8 hours a day. And maybe that won't necessarily afford you a sort of over-idealized sense of the best. You don't get a yacht. You don't get a condo on the ocean. But that wouldn't be best for you anyway if it required working 18 hours a day. No, you deserve the best. You deserve the best of what you actually want, what you're willing to do, what you're willing to pay for. And I want that for you. If that means I'm going to work a little harder, I'm going to raise my standards a little more, I'm going to try to judge things a little more carefully, good, I'm going to do that. But I'm telling you, and I think you already know it's true, at least after this conversation, we are surrounded by miracles, not least of which is ourselves.
Yeah, and what you provide us in terms of miracles and supporting us on Patreon, and PayPal, and liking and sharing, and of course, and subscribing.
Oh yeah, we're getting near the top of the hour, and you are leading us into the wrap-up, which is, if you like what you heard, if you believe what you heard, can you believe it? No, if you value these conversations, first of all, you give us a lot just by being in the chat. But I want to give a huge shout out to those of you who are patrons of the show. Yes, we have a Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Robert Nasir. The link is at robertnasir.com as well, and support the show. Some folks will also give us a one-time tip. They don't want to do the monthly thing, so PayPal, it's paypal.me/Robert Nasir. That link is also at robertnasir.com. Thank you. Thank you to those of you who have done that. And in general, thank you for your support. If you're not a subscriber on the YouTube side, a lot of folks watch on Facebook, for example, please consider subscribing. Click that subscribe button. We're a ways away from getting to 1,000. It's going to take some effort. But with your help, we can make it happen. And once we get to 1,000, we can start doing super chats. We can start getting some recognition. We get more appearances on the front page. Makes a lot of things a lot easier. We're looking forward to it. You can help us get there. And folks, thank you for joining us. The mission statement of this show is, well, you've seen it in the show notes, thrive. We want you to thrive. We want you to experience the success and the happiness that you so richly deserve. I know you do. I know you're out there trying. I know you're all out there trying to do the best you can, live the best life you can. If any of the ideas you see on this show, or even just the humor, helps you do that a little bit better, the gratitude is ours. And that's why we're going to let you go. You guys go watch Yaron Brook. He's going to be good. It's going to be a good show. Thank you for joining us. And as always, before we go, we wish you love.
Yay!